honor of this year's African American History Month, a select group of young scholars from Universal Alcorn Middle School created and delivered a powerful message to you about the significance of jazz, blues, and gospel to the African American experience in America. Hopefully, you will appreciate the importance of their efforts and share their message with others.
To paraphrase the great jazz composer and pianist Dr. Billy Taylor, jazz is America's classical music.
It is an art form that originated from the expression and consciousness of African Americans.
Jazz serves as a musical mirror that reflects how we have seen ourselves at different times in our history.
The blues. The blues originated in the Deep South in the 1860s. It was created by African Americans as an expression of the pain suffered during this period.
The blues consist of work songs, spirituals, field hollers, chants, call and response patterns, and ballads.
I was born by the river in a little tent.
Spirituals were originally an oral tradition that described the hardships of slavery.
Although spirituals were originally unaccompanied simple songs, they developed into harmonized choral arrangements.
A change gonna come. Oh, yes it will.
A look back to better understand the significance of jazz, blues, and gospel to the African American experience in America. Let's take a look back.
1800 to 1861, Congo Square. It was the place where African Americans, both enslaved and free, were permitted to gather every Sunday. This grassy field in New Orleans was where they would socialize, sell goods, sing, dance, and drum, often in the traditions of their African ancestors.
1865 to 1877, Reconstruction. The end of the Civil War ushers in an era of social, political, and rebuilding that established some freedoms for African Americans but left major areas of racial discrimination in place.
1877, the invention of the phonograph. This music machine will allow jazz, blues, and gospel to be recorded and later mass-produced for the first time. Prior to that, the music was heard in mostly limited gatherings.
The 1890s, ragtime blues and the black church. Newly arrived African Americans from the Midwest and the Mississippi Delta began to bring their musical styles to New Orleans.
The blending of ragtime, the blues, gospel, and the sacred music of the Baptist Church produced a sound called jazz.
Composer and pianist Jelly Roll Morton was called by many the father of jazz, but no single individual can claim that honor.
In 1904, he began traveling and spreading this New Orleans sound called jazz and teaching other musicians.
This movement led to the Jazz Age, the Roaring Twenties, the Harlem Renaissance, and the Swing Era.
1954 through 1955, the first crossover hits were released. In 1954, renowned gospel singer Mahalia Jackson reached top 40 music charts with the message in her hit song Rusty Old Halo.
A year later, rhythm and blues singer Ray Charles reached number 2 on the R&B charts with I Got a Woman.
Both songs inspired jazz musicians to infuse more gospel and blues into their own music.
As a result, their music gained greater attention in America. Although America was loving this music, African Americans still had to sit at the back of the bus.
1955. Rosa Parks refuses to give up her bus seat. This single act of defiance in Montgomery, Alabama, sparked a nationwide protest that led to a 381-day boycott, led by a young preacher named Martin Luther King Jr.
The protesters and their families sure had the blues, from loss of work, inability to feed their families, and pay their bills.
However, music was a way of channeling these realities to foster a new sense of hope.
The protests ultimately led to the desegregation of buses throughout the United States.
1964 quotes Martin Luther King Jr. opening remarks at the Berlin Jazz Festival. Jazz speaks for life. When life itself offers no order and meaning, the musician creates an order and meaning from the sounds which flow through his instruments.
Much of the power of our freedom movement in the United States had come from this music. It has strengthened us with its sweet rhythms when courage began to fail. It has calmed us with its rich harmonies when spirits were down.
Everybody needs to love and be loved, to clap hands and be happy. And music, especially this broad category called jazz, there is a stepping stone towards all of these.
(1990s). In 1997, trumpeter Wynton Marsalis's epic oratorio on slavery, "Blood on the Fields," became the first jazz composition to win the prestigious Pulitzer Prize for Jazz.
2021. Today, our society is still divided. Religious leaders, community activists, musicians, and people from all walks of life are still engaged in protests, marches, and demonstrations demanding equality and justice for all.
This has been another episode of a Jazzy Minute. Bye-bye.
Hang on to the world as it spins around. Just don't let the spin get you down.